Hello YouTube, Jerry Kirkpatrick here, and today we're going to have a fun, odd little project. And what we're going to do is take the wheels off of this wheelchair sitting over here and mount them to my generator somewhere in this area here. I'm not sure how far forward or how high it's going to be placed. But if you remember in my last video, I mentioned that when I'm moving this from where it's usually placed and started once a month to where it's going to be used, these little bitty wheels fell into every undulation in the dirt out there. And by holding it way out here, every time one of these wheels fall into a hole, it really jerks you over one way or the other while you're holding up primarily the whole weight of the generator and the 8-gallon gas tank, which is all the way on top. So to give you an idea of what it was that I'm talking about, I took a jack stand with some spacers and put it on top of a scale out here, and that whole arrangement weighed 14.68 pounds. And then I took the handle, sat it on top of the jack stand just so the support was clearing. I had all of the weight on the jack stand. That turned out to be 73.28 pounds. So if you take the 14.68 away from the 73.28 pounds, I was having to hold up and move around with the thing jerking all over the place every time it found a hole. I was having to carry just about 60 pounds. It was 58.60 pounds. So that is what gave me the impetus to take the wheels off of a wheelchair and put them on here. So with that said, now you know the purpose for doing this. Let's get on to what it's going to take to mount the wheels onto the frame. Also, I want to pick this up 3 inches. That's what these spacer blocks are. You can see the distance from the table to here. I've added 3 inches. So let me get the generator up, sitting on the spacers that I've got placed around, and take the wheels off both sides, and then we'll get into what it's going to take to get the wheelchair wheels mounted on here. Using these brackets, and make a set of jack stands for the back and a spacer for the generator to rest on in the front. So let me get all that stuff done, and I'll bring you back as soon as I get this arranged where we can start getting some dimensions off of it. Okay, so now I have it up on the blocks. You can see that it's higher than it was before. So there's 3 things that I need to do to get the generator so I can move it easily, and so when I get it in position, I can take the wheels off and have access to all of the controls. I don't know that it's necessary to remove the wheels, but it's sat for almost 3 years, so there's no need in tying up a set of wheels for any length of time where I might be able to use them on something else. And my plan is, the way I have this designed, I can just pop them off in a heartbeat. So let's get on with that. The main thing that I need to do is make this arrangement so it will come on and off. The wheels themselves will be placed on there with what they call a pip pin. If you know what a pip pin is, we use them all the time in racing for shock mounts, mainly, and some other mounts that we want to remove quickly. So all I need is a piece of tubing that will be placed in here somewhere. I won't know exactly where that is for 2 reasons. One, I've got to put a set of jack stands on the back here and lower the original front mount. There's 2 rubber pads. I have to lower those 3 inches also. So before I can weld this bung in here, all you have to do is push this button, slide the wheel on. This will not come off. You push the button and it comes right off. So the first thing I did was make these 2 pieces. One that will be on the other side, and then this one that will hook on here, and I won't know exactly where it goes until I get the jack stand in the rear, the front supports in place, and then I can move these fore and aft to get the weight of the handle out here about 25 or 30, 20 to 30 pounds. So by moving the axle fore and aft, that will shift the weight either more or less on the handle. So the way these things just hook on the bottom and then slide up here. The litch pin goes in there and they're affixed. Moving them back and forth, like I say, will facilitate changing the weight of the handle. So all these are, I made these first, so I knew they were going to take a while, so I made these first, so when I get the jack stands on the back and the mount in the front, I can get right to finding out where this bushing is going to go. So what I started with was a piece of 1 by 2 rectangle tube, and I drilled a 1/8 inch hole in the top, so while I'm welding everything, the gases are allowed to escape through that hole and won't blow out any of the welds. So first, let me show you how I made this little hook. So that was quite interesting, wasn't it? There was a kind of a joy to get back to doing a little blacksmithing, question mark. This was just forming with heat. And if you noticed, I used the rosebud instead of lighting my forge. And the reason for that was I wanted an isolated heat. With the rosebud, I could heat only this portion of the material and work it. If I used the forge, I would have got a much longer heat, and then I would have had to cool with a can, cool until I wanted that transition line. So that's why I use the rosebud instead of using my forge. So the next thing I needed to do is make these two brackets. The longer one that gets welded on the top of the 1x2, and then the shorter one that creates the clevis to go up here. Let me show you what it took to make those. So now that I've got the clevis made and welded on to the latch pin, I can take these off, and the next thing I want to make is the bracket that will go on the back here for the jack stand. So I'm wanting to make a mark on the outside of this tube, and I want it flush with this other tube here. So I know that the rotation of this tube for the jack stand is right, and I can get this hole right in the center of this tube in the back there. And if you notice, if I put this straight edge across here, the battery is in the way. So I'm a little over an ½ inch away from this tube here. So what I've done is I've taken a pony clamp, I took a 1/2 inch spacer, 1/2 inch piece of bar stock, and the soapstone here, put that all together, and that will get me outside of the battery. So I just took another piece of 1/2 inch bar stock and a piece of soapstone. I'm going to hold it right in back there. I have the soapstone and that spacer touching on the far side, and all I need to do is make a mark right there. Now I know that this line is in the center of this tube going this way. If I drill right straight through, mount that, the center of this tube is going to be centered on the framework. So there's a little hot tip for you. So the next thing to do is find out where I want these, how high I want them. I think I'm going to put that hole right at the tangent point. I can put a straight edge here, sight through here, and I'll make a mark at where this radius leaves the back edge. That would be the tangent point of this radius here. So I want that bolt at tangent, and that's where these will leave. So let me get some 1/4 inch holes drilled through here and the other side, get these mounted, and then we'll come back and make the jack stand itself. Okay, so here are the adapter, I guess you'd call them, pieces that will accept the stanchions, the stand that they will be resting on. I made these while you were watching that. I went over and made a couple of these. They're just 1 inch square tubing with a 120 wall. Put a little foot on the bottom, drilled a hole so that pin will go in there. When they're at rest, the generator will be at this height. Then I can move it up here, put the pin back in, let it rest on the top. Then we have clearance at the bottom. So I raised the generator 3 inches, so I'm more comfortable carrying it at this level. So I won't need to have this at a great angle as I'm moving it around. And one thing that really has helped me with this project, since I have a piece of 1 inch tubing that has to go into another piece I purchased this from Harbor Freight, and I've wanted one for quite some time, but I wouldn't buy the cheap one that Harbor Freight had for forever. But one of the last times I was in there, I noticed that they had a much nicer, better built little grinder, belt sander, that I feel that this one is going to last a long time. It's not one of those tools like the other Harbor Freight tools that you buy, you use them, and you finish that job, and from then on, if it goes away, you don't care, because they were so cheap. These cost a little bit more, but this might be a tool that you want to just keep in the shop if you want to be removing the flash from one piece of tubing, like I did here, and on these, which will be going up front. And you can deburr the inside of tubing, round or square. And one of the very first things I did, they have this piece that goes behind the disc, or the belt here. And as you've seen with my belt sander, I never have the backing on it unless I'm doing a radius or something that requires a backing behind the belt. Well, the first thing I did was take this off, and this made the belt to be able to flex. So not only could I do the inside of a tube, even the 1 inch I use this on. But with this being able to flex, you can radius this inside. Usually you'll get a sharp edge there, another one there and there, and you have to use a round file to get that off. By removing that backing, you can get a nice radius. So that is something that you might consider purchasing for yourself. So now that we have the stands, the mount in place, the stand made, these will be in the down position when the generator is being stored, and then when I need to move it to where it's going to be used, these will be put down so the generator is resting just in the front and the rear. So the next thing to do is mount these. These are 3-inch square. Got a hole in the top and the bottom. I don't know what size. This is just a 1/4 inch hole. I'm not sure what size I'm going to need when I put them in the front. So now that the rear is done, let's get over to the front of the generator and see how these are going to be mounted. So here we are at the front of the machine. Here's the handle, and you can see here that there is a standoff with 2 rubber pads underneath, and that's what it used to stand on all the time when it was at its lower height. So all I've done is take a couple of pieces of 3-inch square tubing. I found the center of each end and just drilled a 1/4 inch hole, so when I find out what the size that I'm going to need is, I've already got that established. So let me get these 2 rubber feet off and find out what kind of bolts are going to be required I'm thinking that once this is off, I can just drill and tap the top, let that sit up there, and these rubber feet have a recess with the bolt goes through and a flat washer and nut on the inside. So I'll probably use exactly the same thing. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to use the same bolts that are holding those rubber feet on, drill the proper size hole in these two pieces, and then hopefully use the same bolts to mount them on the bottom. So let me get that all done, and I'll bring you back and we'll see how this thing looks actually sitting on the jack stands and these feet. So here we have the front landing gear down, fixed and ready to go. So here we are at the rear with both of the jack stands in place. They're down as they would be, just as it will be as it's waiting to be used. So with these in place, the next thing to do is get these two brackets ready for the wheel. One of these will go on the other side. This one goes here. It's hooked on the bottom. A pin holds it in place. So they're very simple to install and remove. So the next thing I've got to do is weld this bushing in to the tubes here. The center line of the axle is 12 inches. So I've marked up from the ground 12.5 inches. And that allows for, when the generator is sitting on the jack stands and the front mount there, the wheel will be a ½ inch off of the ground, and that way I can push the button, take the wheels off, remove the pin, and easily remove these two brackets. So now that I've got the dimensions for where the axle is going to go, let me bore these out. This is ½ inch ID, which is the same as the axle. The OD is 3/4, so I got to drill two 3/4 inch holes and then weld these in, and we'll be ready to assemble the whole thing. So here we have both of the uprights, the adapters for the wheel, finished. I kept this bushing about 1/4 inch proud of one side, just to make sure that the wheel itself would not be hampered by the battery sticking out slightly. And while I welded these in on both sides, after I did that, I took silicon bronze and filled the gap that I left in the bottom here, in the top, and then let them cool, and then filled the hole, that 1/8 inch hole that I drilled to let the gases escape from the tube. After I got that done, I took my hammer and anvil and tuned the distance in between here. When I tried them on, these would wobble slightly. So now I have them tight. I have to really pull this on because it's so tight. So, and that's what I need, because once I get the wheel on here, if this were free to rotate, then it would change the toe in or toe out of the wheel as I went along. And you know, in a high-speed turn, you do not want the toe in changing. So I took care of that problem by adjusting the width of that little J-hook at the bottom. So now that these are installed, I have the pin in. All I have to do is push this button that relieves the little balls that are at the end of the pip pin here. So all I have to do is push the pin, slide that in there, and now I have wheels on my generator. And this is getting kind of long, so I think I'm going to hold it here, stop at this point, because there are several things that have to be done for my next video, that will be done in the next video. One of them is make a quick jack for the rear here. I need something to raise the back end of the generator just maybe an inch or so. Take the weight off of the jack so I can pull the pin, raise this hole above, put the pin back in, and then I can move the generator around. So with that, I think I'm going to call it at this point. I've got quite a bit done, but I have a little bit more to figure out on how I'm going to raise the generator about an inch to make the transition from using the wheels to setting it down on the jack stands. So thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. And if I'm lucky, I'll see you on the next one.